Welcome to the deep dive, Marie-Antoinette. That name, it just brings up so much, doesn't it? Opulence, scandal, that whole let them eat cake thing.
Which, yeah, probably never happened. But the image sticks.
It really does. And beyond that caricature, there's a whole person, a whole life. So our mission today is to really unpack her story. We're using the source materials you shared, looking at the key events, the influences from her Austrian childhood right through to that, well, incredibly dramatic end.
Exactly. And it's not just about listing facts. We want to understand the forces, the personal choices.
Right, the things that made her such a pivotal figure. Her personal story just gets so tangled up with these massive historical shifts.
That's what the sources really bring out, this collision, between her own experience and these huge currents sweeping across Europe.
Okay, so let's rewind right back to the start. Maria Antonia Josefa Johanna.
Quite a mouthful.
Definitely. Born second to last of 16 children. 16, to Empress Maria Theresa of Austria and Emperor Francis III.
Imagine that household. Yeah. 16 kids.
It's kind of mind-boggling, but as our sources point out, this wasn't just, a big family. It was a political powerhouse.
Oh, absolutely. Her birth, mid-18th century, it's all tied up in the politics of the time. Marie Theresa, her mother, she was a really formidable ruler, fought hard in the War of Austrian Succession.
But lost Silesia, right, to Prussia.
Yes, to Frederick the Great.
Yeah.
And that loss, it really shaped everything afterwards, fueled this long rivalry, drove her diplomatic strategy.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Austria and France, historically enemies.
Totally, for centuries.
So they start seeing a potential alliance, especially as Prussia cozies up to Great Britain.
Right. Our sources detail this huge diplomatic realignment. It all leads up to the 7 Years' War.
Often called the first real global conflict.
Pretty much. And suddenly, Austria and France are fighting on the same side. A massive reversal, even if the war didn't quite achieve everything they hoped.
So to lock down this new alliance, a marriage.
The ultimate diplomatic tool back then.
Yeah.
Maria Theresa and King Louis XVII of France hatched this plan.
And the target is young Maria Antonia, to marry Louis Auguste, Louis VI's grandson, the future Louis VI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This wasn't about romance, it was pure strategy, a way to bridge that old Habsburg-Bourbon divide.
It's kind of wild how these royal kids were basically pawns. Maria Theresa was famous for it, wasn't she?
Oh yes. The Habsburg motto sums it up. Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry.
All about dynasty. But the irony, as the sources show, is that this marriage meant for stability.
Yeah.
It ends up being a domino, leading to crisis, revolution, wars all over Europe.
Massive unintended consequences. Truly staggering historical weight.
So while all this political maneuvering is happening, what's her childhood like?
Well, culturally, quite rich. The Habsburg court loved the arts, music, dance, theater, and she was involved, participated, showed some artistic flair, apparently.
But academics?
Less so. The sources suggest she wasn't the most diligent student, especially, history, general knowledge, that kind of thing.
Okay, fast forward, April 1770. She's 14, and she's leaving Austria, heading to France to marry the Dauphin.
14. Imagine that, leaving everything you know.
Must have been incredibly daunting.
Absolutely. And Marie Theresa sends her off with very, very specific instructions.
Oh, I bet.
Obey your husband, charm the court, which was notoriously tricky, and be so good, so virtuous, the French think you're an angel.
Wow. No pressure then.
None at all. There were even detailed behavioral guides, and she had to swear an oath to reread them every single month.
Every month. That's intense, constant scrutiny.
It really was. Maria Theresa even wrote to Louis the Kick Thief himself, basically saying, look, be patient with her, she's still a kid, might act like one.
Shows how delicate the whole thing felt.
Immense pressure on a very young girl. And that ceremony at the border, that's really striking.
On the Rhine, right. May 1770.
Yeah, on an island, everything Austrian she possessed, literally down to the last ribbon, was taken away.
Stripped bare.
And replaced with French clothes, French everything. Symbolically becoming Marie.
And her Austrian attendants couldn't even cross with her.
Nope. Had to say goodbye right there. Hugely emotional, apparently.
You can almost picture it, the weight of that moment. So she arrives in France. First impressions.
Well, Louis XV, the old king, he was charmed straight away, which must have been something of a release.
But the Dauphin, Louis Auguste?
Different story. Sources describe him as shy, awkward, a bit stiff.
Not exactly sweeping her off her feet.
Not really. When they were formally introduced, he was apparently quite reserved. His greeting was, well, formal, perfunctory.
And the wedding itself, May 16th, 1770.
Both clearly very nervous. Eyewitnesses even noted that Dauphin's hands were visibly shaking during the ring part.
But the big problem, the thing that immediately caused issues, the marriage wasn't consummated.
Yes, and this wasn't private. They were publicly escorted to the bedroom. It was true.
Sort of confirmed thing.
Exactly. But nothing happened, and word got out immediately. Became instant gossip.
That must have been unbelievably awkward and damaging.
Profoundly damaging, especially for royals. Their main job, produce an heir, secure the succession.
So this failure, it wasn't just personal, it was political, a threat.
A direct threat to the monarchy's stability, yeah. No heir meant vulnerability. Huge rumors started swirling.
And their personalities didn't exactly help bridge the gap, did they?
Not at all. Our sources paint them as complete opposites.
She was lively, extroverted.
Yeah, vivacious. While he was reserved, quiet, kind of melancholic.
She was impulsive, he was indecisive.
She hated books, he loved reading.
And wasn't he really tall, like significantly taller?
Yeah, around 6'4", apparently.
Yeah.
She was likely quite a bit shorter. Big contrast.
So these differences, they created distance.
They certainly did. Although sources say Louis did grow fond of her in private, just struggled with intimacy for 7 years.
7 years. And in Versailles, where everyone sees everything.
Exactly. Privacy was basically non-existent. So this unconsummated marriage, it became common knowledge, court gossip, then wider public knowledge. A huge liability.
How did people react? The court, the king?
Well, Louis XVI, the grandfather, he was surprisingly patient, according to our sources.
Yeah.
Told people not to pressure them, thought it would sort itself out eventually.
But back in Austria, Maria Theresa.
Oh, she was not patient, deeply anxious, and tended to blame Marie.
Really? Blamed her daughter.
Yeah, their letters from this time show a lot of strain. Marie Theresa had spies, well, agents, in Versailles feeding her reports.
And she let Marie know she wasn't happy.
Absolutely. Criticized her friends, her spending, which was starting to get noticed, her inability to persuade her husband.
Persuade him to consummate the marriage. Wow.
Yes, and just her general behavior, which she saw as frivolous and fueling gossip. She was genuinely worried things would get worse if Marie didn't shape up.
How did Marie take all this?
Defensively, mostly. She wrote back saying she was unhappy about the rumors, insisted she was committed to the alliance, but she also sort of pushed back, saying her mother always focused on the negative. Still, that image of her as extravagant, it was starting to take hold.
Then, bang. May 1774, Louis XV dies of smallpox.
And everything changes overnight. Louis becomes Louis VI, aged just 20. Marie, 19, is Queen of France.
A new reign. Must have been a mix of hope and, well, underlying tension.
Initially, yeah, there was optimism. Louis XVI seemed kind, smart, dutiful, maybe lacked his grandfather's, presence.
But decent.
Right. But the goodwill towards Marie, it faded fast. Those first 4 years as queen, still no children, and her lifestyle.
It started to grate on people.
Massively. It seemed like they were living separate lives. He was up early, working early to bed. Disciplined. Late nights, late mornings, enjoying Paris, opera, masked balls, spending a fortune on clothes, jewels, those enormous feathered hairstyles everyone talks about.
The towering hair.
And the gambling.
That really hurt her image, known to lose huge sums. It all fed into this idea that her extravagance was a big reason for France's money problems.
Which led to that awful nickname.
Madame Déficit. Madame Déficit. It stuck. And it wasn't just about the cash. It was about appearing totally out of touch while people were struggling.
And then Louis gave her the Petit Trianon, that little chateau at Versailles. Yeah, originally built for Madame de Pompadour. It was meant as a private escape for her.
Somewhere to get away from the rigid court life.
Exactly. Invite her friends, decorate how she wanted. But again, the perception.
Looked like another indulgence, living in a bubble.
That's how many saw it. While intended as maybe, a kind gesture, possibly even compensation for their earlier marital issues.
Oh, interesting point. Sources mention he paid her debts too, right? Quietly.
Yes, regularly and discreetly settled her considerable debts. Maybe a silent apology, who knows?
Yeah.
But publicly, the Trianon just added to the negative image.
Okay, so things are strained. Then her brother shows up. It's summer of 1777.
Right. Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II. Unexpected visit. Officially, he's there to check on the alliance. Unofficially.
To sort out the marriage problem.
Pretty much.
Yep.
And apparently he hit it off okay with Louis XVI. Louis even confided in him about the intimacy issues.
So what was the issue? For years, people thought it was physical, right? Phimosis, maybe surgery.
That was the theory for a long time. But more recent sources, especially Joseph's own letters back to their mother, Maria Theresa.
They suggest something else.
Yeah, they lean more towards it being psychological. Louis's deep shyness, his inexperience, that's the view most modern historians take now.
Okay, so regardless of why, Joseph's visit actually worked.
Amazingly, yeah. Just weeks after he left, Marie writes this ecstatic letter to her mother. It's quoted in the sources, announcing, finally,
For 7 years.
7 long years, marriage was consummated.
And then finally, a child, December 1778.
Their first, a daughter, Marie-Therese Charlotte, named after her mother and her favorite aunt.
Still not the male heir they needed, but a step. Did it help their popularity?
It did initially. Gave people hope a son would follow, secure the dynasty.
But while this personal drama is unfolding, France itself is changing. Radically.
Hugely. As our sources keep stressing, this personal stuff is happening against this backdrop of massive social and political upheaval. New ideas are taking root.
Ideas that challenge the whole system, the monarchy itself.
Exactly. And it seems like Louis and Marie were kind of insulated from it all, living at Versailles, privileged upbringing. They maybe didn't grasp the depth of the discontent brewing outside the palace walls.
And France was struggling, right? Economic.
Immensely. They'd spent massively on wars helping the Americans against Britain, cost a fortune, plus bad harvests.
So food prices soaring, taxes going up, people were hungry.
Angry, very angry. And then you add the Enlightenment ideas spreading.
Accountability, rights, getting rid of privilege.
Exactly. It all hit the French monarchy when it was arguably at its weekend. A perfect storm, really.
So Marie has more kids in the 1780s. 2 sons, tragically both died young, but their public image just kept sinking.
Kept plummeting. The king's seen as weak, ineffective, both in the bedroom and in governing.
And the queen.
She got painted as the power behind the throne, but in a bad way. Dominant, greedy, manipulating his weakness.
And those pamphlets, the libels, they got worse.
Much worse. Really scandalous, often pornographic, attacking them personally, degrading them. As the revolution got closer, they became darker, more threatening, vicious stuff.
And the rumors about affairs, especially from those early childless years.
They never really went away. And the name Count Axel von Fersen comes up a lot. Handsome Swedish count, fought in America.
And we now know those rumors were true.
Seems so. Modern tech analyzing their letters, as detailed in some sources, pretty much confirms a passionate affair. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
Definitely. And the Petit Trianon, it became that sort of fantasy village.
Yeah, the Hameau de la Reine.
Yeah.
Where she played at being a simple shepherdess wearing simple dresses.
While employing actual peasants as the rest of France starved.
That's how it looked. The contrast was just brutal. And the cost of building it all fueled enormous resentment.
Then more tragedy. Their youngest daughter, Sophie, died in 1787, just a baby.
Only 11 months old.
Yeah.
Tuberculosis. Sources say it hit Louis VI really hard. Sent him deeper into depression, drinking, overeating.
So, with the king struggling, Marie tries to step into politics.
She did. Tried to protect the monarchy, her family. Sat in on meetings, got involved in appointing ministers.
But she wasn't really suited for it.
By her own admission, not really. She lacked the aptitude, the training, and ultimately she couldn't fix the core problem, France's massive economic crisis.
Which leads us to 1789. Desperate times. Louis decides to call the Estates General.
A huge move. It hadn't met since 1614. Nobility, clergy, and the Third Estate, the commoners.
But they all wanted different things.
Fundamentally different. The Third Estate, representing most people, pushed for a constitutional republic, more power for them. The others wanted to protect their privileges. Instant deadlock.
And right in the middle of this political crisis, another personal blow. Their eldest son, the Dauphin Louis Joseph, dies.
Yeah, June 4th. Just 7 years old. Tuberculosis again, a month after the Estates General opened.
And the public reaction?
Relatively indifferent, sources say. Which is shocking. Shows how far the monarchy had fallen in public esteem.
Then, June 12th, the Third Estate finds their meeting hall locked.
They see it as a move by the king to shut them down. So this group, they had already declared themselves the National Assembly.
They find somewhere else to meet.
Yep, a nearby indoor tennis court. And they take the famous tennis court oath.
Vowing not to leave until France has a constitution.
Exactly. A constitution established on solid foundations. A direct challenge to the king. Massive moment.
Things escalate fast after that. Unrest grows, leading to July 14th.
Bastille Day. The storming of the Bastille prison, a symbol of royal tyranny.
And it was violent. Prisoners freed, weapons seized, the governor killed.
Beheaded by a butcher, yeah. His head paraded on a pike. A really gruesome, clear message. The old order was shattering.
And the king's reaction when he heard, "Is this a revolt?"
And the famous reply, "No, sire, it is a revolution."
Chilling. The fall of the Bastille just sped everything up. Nobles started fleeing France.
Emigrating in droves. Marie-Antoinette wanted to go too, apparently.
But Louis decided to stay.
He did. And she ultimately respected that. Chose to stay with him and the children. Sources suggest this crisis actually brought them closer.
But was staying the right call? For their safety. Hindsight is 20/20, I guess.
It's a huge what if. Then came October. More chaos.
The Women's March on Versailles, sparked by rumors of a royal banquet.
Exactly. While Parisian women couldn't afford bread, they marched demanding food, and their numbers just grew and grew. Men joined too.
They stormed the palace.
Total chaos. The royal family basically became prisoners in their own home, then forced to leave Versailles forever.
Escorted by the National Guard to Paris, to the Tuileries Palace.
Right in the city center, where they could be watched, monitored. It was the end of their independence, really.
And Louis's morale just collapsed after that.
Seems so. But Marie, sources say she kept fighting, secretly communicating, trying to find help. Anyone who might save the monarchy.
But eventually, even she despaired and decided they had to escape.
Yes, she finally persuaded the king that fleeing was their only option.
Which leads to the flight to Varennes, June 1791.
A desperate, secret escape attempt. Late at night, horse-drawn carriage, meticulous planning.
Organized by Axel von Fersen, right? Her lover.
Yes, he arranged the whole thing. They actually got quite far from Paris.
But they were caught in Varennes. How?
Incredible story. A local postmaster recognized the king from his picture on a coin and a signet.
No way. Just from a coin.
Apparently so. Carriage stopped, searched, royal insignia found. Game over.
Forced back to Paris, under guard. Humiliating. Must have crushed any remaining hope.
Absolutely devastating. A turning point from which there was really no return.
And then things just spiral downwards. France declares war on Austria the next April.
Escalating everything. Then in September, the monarchy is officially abolished, completely gone.
Followed by the September massacres in Paris. Utter chaos and violence.
Yeah. For their safety, the family gets moved to the Temple Fortress, imprisoned. Ironically, it was probably safer inside than out on the streets then.
Yeah.
Brief, grim sort of calm.
But temporary. December comes, and citizen Louis Capet is put on trial.
For treason, convicted, sentenced to death by guillotine in January 1793.
He handled it with dignity, they say, said goodbye to his family.
Yes, heartbreaking farewells. Executed the next day, a seismic event for France and Europe.
Marie must have been destroyed.
Utterly clung to her children. But then just months later, they were taken from her too. Louis Charles, the young boy, and Marie-Thérèse, gone, left her with nothing.
Just unimaginable cruelty. Then she's moved again. To the conciergerie.
Yeah, the antechamber to the guillotine just before her own trial.
And the charges against her. Treason. Spending.
Moral corruption.
All of the above. Conspiring with Austria, bankrupting France. Plus loads of lurid, unsubstantiated stuff about her morals.
But was there actual proof?
Very little concrete evidence, according to the sources. Mostly rumors, propaganda. And horrifically, they manipulated her own son, Louis Charles, into testifying against her with false accusations.
That's sickening. So the trial was a foregone conclusion.
Pretty much. Accused of treason before the Revolutionary Tribunal. Swift conviction, sentence, death. Her last day, October 16th, 1793. What do the sources say?
It's a grim picture.
Yeah.
Dressed simply in white, hands tied, taken through Paris in an open cart.
For an hour, through crowds jeering at her.
Yes. To the Place de la Concorde, then called Place de la Révolution, enduring insults the whole way.
But she remained composed, stoic.
Remarkably so, by all accounts. There's that final poignant detail, accidentally stepping on the executioner's foot on the scaffold.
And her last words were an apology.
Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose.
And the guillotine.
And the crowd's reaction.
Silence at first, apparently. Then, jubilation. Cheering the death of the woman who'd become France's most hated symbol.
What an end. From Austrian princess, Queen of France, to that. It's just staggering.
A truly dramatic life. And such a brutal illustration of how politics, personality, public perception, it all just collided.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Going through all this, looking at the sources. How do you reevaluate her? What really led to that tragic end?
Was it circumstance? Her own choices? The revolutionary fervor, it's complex, definitely makes you want to keep digging into that whole period, a pivotal, turbulent time in history.